The storm had come out of nowhere. 1 minute, Finn was sailing under a calm, clear sky, and the next, waves were crashing over the deck, lightning flashing across the horizon. The sea roared as if it had awoken from a long slumber, furious and hungry. His small boat was tossed like a toy, and before he could react, it slammed into something hard, a jagged reef lurking just below the surface. The boat broke apart, and Finn was plunged into the cold depths. When he finally awoke, gasping for air, he was on a beach, soaked to the bone, his body battered but alive. Fog hung thick over the shore, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. His boat was nowhere to be seen, but rising through the mist was a tall, dark shape of a lighthouse. The island, if you could call it that, was little more than a rock jutting from the sea. Surrounding it were unusually calm waters, almost too calm after the storm that had ravaged him. There were no birds, no wind, just an oppressive, peculiar stillness. Finn staggered to his feet, his legs aching from the strain. He needed help, and the lighthouse was his only hope. The path to it was worn, overgrown, as though no one had used it in years. The lamp, however, shone brightly, cutting through the fog with unwavering persistence. It felt like the only source of life in this desolate place. As he made his way toward the lighthouse, a strange feeling settled over him. It was an ancient structure, its stones weathered by time and the relentless sea. But something about it felt off, like it was out of place here, standing against the natural order of things. Finn reached the door, and with a creak, it opened. The inside was as cold and lifeless as the air outside. Dust covered every surface, thick and undisturbed, clinging to the warped wooden floorboards and the cobweb-draped beams above. The furniture looked untouched for years, an old chair with faded fabric, a desk cluttered with yellowed papers, and shelves lined with rusted tools and forgotten trinkets. He called out, half expecting someone to answer, but no one responded after a full minute. Still, there were signs of life: an open logbook on the table, cups on the shelf, a coat hanging by the door. The log entries began ordinarily enough: weather reports, lamp maintenance, and the rare mention of a passing ship. But as Finn read on, the tone grew increasingly erratic, and the notes became more disjointed. 12th day, the fog is thicker tonight. No ships. 21st day, shadows move upon the water. They watch. Light flickers, but I fixed the lamp. Must keep it burning. 33rd day, silence grows too loud. The ocean waits, restless beneath the stillness. I swear I hear it breathing. 40th day, if the light goes out, it will rise. It hungers for the dark. 52nd day, I've sealed the door to the tower. It whispers from the sea, calling for me by name. The light is all that I have. 68th day, there are sounds from below, low rumbling like distant thunder. I've boarded up the windows, but it slips in through the cracks. The light dims, and I fear what waits beyond. The entries stopped abruptly. The final page was stained with something yellowish-green, a hastily scrawled message that was impossible to read, leaving Finn with more questions than answers. Finn frowned. Who wrote these entries? The ink looks recent, yet the place felt abandoned, as if the keeper had just stood up and left. He felt a shiver run down his spine as he moved to the staircase that spiraled up toward the lamp. The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows, and for a moment he thought he heard something, a low, rhythmic sound like a hum. Was it the wind passing through the building? Finn continues to ascend the tower. A faint scraping echoed through the stone walls, as if someone was moving just out of sight. At first he thought it was the building settling, but the rhythm was too deliberate. When he stopped, it stopped. When he moved, it started again, closer this time. At the top of the tower, the great lens rotated with mechanical precision, casting beams of light into the fog. Finn stared out the window, hoping to see land or a passing ship. Instead, he saw nothing but the stillness of the ocean and the fog swallowing the horizon. Then he saw it, just a flash, barely visible through the haze. A figure, pale and fleeting, moved at the edge of the light's reach, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. His heart pounded. Was it a trick of the light? He turned, intending to go back down, but as he reached the stairs, a gust of wind slammed the door behind him. The hum outside grew louder, a deep and guttural sound. The light in the tower flickered. And in that brief moment of darkness, Finn heard something from below, a long drawn-out creak, followed by the sound of water sloshing against stone. The wind outside intensified although the waters remained eerily calm, the surface like a mirror. He ran down the stairs, his pulse racing. When he reached the main floor, the door to the outside hung open, swinging on its hinges. As Finn stepped out, the fog seemed thicker, more oppressive. The strange hum had grown louder, vibrating through the ground. Something caught his eyes beyond. The beach, once barren, was now littered with 4 dark, massive shapes. At first, he thought they were rocks, but as he went back out to investigate, these turned out to be stone structures of 5 to 6 stories high each. All of them ancient, covered in barnacles and seaweed. He was here a while ago. How did he miss them? Finn suddenly feels lightheaded. I was here just a while ago, right? Was it 10 minutes ago or an hour? Did I fall asleep in the tower and more time had passed? Finn's skin crawled. This place was wrong. The ground trembled beneath him, and then slowly the sea began to ripple, as though something was stirring beneath the surface. He backed away toward the lighthouse, his eyes locked on the water. A huge wave swelled from the depths, though the sea had been calm moments before. The water bulged, rippling outward as though something massive was pushing up from below. As it continued to rise, Finn's breath hitched. The sheer size of it defied reason. It wasn't water at all. It was something else. The surface shimmered with a slick darkness, glistening in the pale light as colossal shapes began to emerge. The rising form cast deep shadows over the lighthouse, blotting out the stars. Massive, leathery wings unfurled, dripping with seawater that steamed in the cool night air. Tentacles, long and curling, breached the surface, moving with a dreadful purpose. The fog seemed to cling to the thing, swirling and recoiling, as though repelled by the presence of something beyond nature. Finn struggled to comprehend what he was seeing, his mind grasping for any familiar frame of reference but finding none. It was like the sea itself had come alive, shaped into a nightmare that had been lurking beneath the surface all along. The massive, writhing form broke through the calm, rising from the deep. Its surface was slick with brine and covered in ancient coral, with tentacles that slithered impossibly long, curling and stretching toward the sky. Its body was an amalgamation of grotesque forms, barnacles, fish scales, and something indescribable, something that made Finn's mind reel in horror. Eyes, dozens of them, glowed faintly in the mist, each one staring into his soul with a knowing ancient hunger. But the lamp flickered once more and then blazed brighter than before. The creature recoiled, its tentacles flailing wildly, slamming into the rocks and sending sprays of water high into the air. It let out a sound, a deep, otherworldly bellow that reverberated the cool night air, charging it with enough energy to warm up the atmosphere by a few degrees. Finn stumbled back inside the lighthouse, slamming the door behind him. The logbook's words echoed in his mind, "The light is all I have." Outside, the creature thrashed, its body partially submerged as it writhed in agony, unable to fully emerge in the presence of the light. Finn, shaking, stumbled back to the top of the tower, desperately checking the mechanisms of the lens. He couldn't let the light go out, not now, not ever. As he stared down at the nightmare below, Finn's fractured mind tried to make sense of what is happening. A hypothesis. The lighthouse and this island weren't a refuge. It was a ward, a barrier to keep whatever this was at bay. The lamp flickered. Finn stumbled backward, the enormity of it making his mind feel as if it were tearing at the seams. The air grew thick, suffused with an unnatural pressure that seemed to compress his lungs and blur his vision. He fell to the ground, his gaze on the shape as it towered over the island, blotting out the sky. The lamp flickered again, dimmed for a moment before lighting up. There was a moment, just a moment, where Finn thought he heard a voice, a whisper carried on the wind. It spoke no words he could understand, but its tone was almost beckoning, as though it were welcoming him. The lamp continued to flicker, casting erratic beams across the fog-draped sea. Finn clung to the railing at the top of the tower, his breath ragged, eyes fixed on the writhing shape beyond. The creature's bulk loomed in the darkness, its tentacles slapping against the water in a chaotic frenzy. Each flicker of the light seemed to weaken its form, driving it back into the depths. But then the lamp dimmed, lingering in darkness a moment too long. The air grew heavy, thick with an unnatural quiet, as though the island itself held its breath. Finn's gaze shifted to the fog, where faint shapes seemed to move, shadows gliding just out of reach, circling closer. A whisper floated up from the base of the tower, carried on a breeze that shouldn't exist. It was faint, like a voice heard in a dream, beckoning him softly. The lighthouse trembled, and the ground below seemed to pulse in rhythm with the slow, inevitable approach of the darkness that pressed against the light's feeble glow. The fog closed in, suffocating and absolute. For a heartbeat, Finn thought he saw faces in the mist, empty eyes staring back at him, mouths silently shaping his name. His fingers slipped from the railing, the pressure around him growing unbearable, as though the air itself was swallowing him whole. And then, as if answering a long-forgotten call, the lamp went dark. The silence that followed was so profound, it felt like the world had ceased to exist. There was no wind, no sound of waves, only the cold, enveloping blackness. Finn's last thought was not of terror, but of an overwhelming sense of release, as if a burden he had never understood was finally being lifted. When the light finally sputtered back to life, the tower stood empty. The only sound was the faint lapping of water against stone, and the distant, almost imperceptible echo of a whisper fading into the depths.